Well, we're here with Ben Frederick from Small Monsters Projects. We're going to talk about today cycling. We're going to talk about the great work that Ben is doing. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So we've known each other for a few years. I'd say this year we're trying to be friends and like chatting outside of the bike and the Grasshoppers. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and follow both what you're doing with Small Monsters and also your campaign in Europe racing cyclocross. So if you can give us a little bit of background into you as an athlete and into your brain injury that led you to then have created this foundation and this project.
Yeah. First off, I just want to, the reason we're having this talk is because Small Monsters Project is going to be the beneficiary for the King Ridge Hopper coming up on Saturday. It's very exciting.
Right.
Thank you all for participating and being involved. Like most young kids, well, I started riding bikes when I was like 21, so I kind of got a little bit later of a start, but still had ambitions of being a professional rider. And so I was deep down that path for being a road racer. I raced at the Cat 1 professional level for a few years and then transitioned to cyclocross. And after what I would call like a breakout year where I got on some UCI podiums and got 12th at nationals, I was gearing up for, like my first big, I'm going to just really blow people's doors off. But on a training ride, I had a kind of a freak little accident where it would be like tripping on a linoleum floor. Like I wasn't getting rad. I wasn't doing anything challenging. I just kind of slid out into soft sand, and the way my head hit the ground, it like all that momentum just went to a complete stop. There was no bounce, no slide, and what I thought was just a mild concussion actually over the course of a few days, weeks, turned into something that was, much more serious and kind of an inflection point in my whole life. I went from being, one of the self-described top bike racers in the country to, I couldn't even go to the grocery store or drive a car or read without having massive symptoms. And my world went from looking towards Europe and traveling the country to, barely being able to leave my house. Mm-hmm. And that was the start of like a 2-3 year journey back to, maybe not even back to, but finding out who I was outside of the bike. With brain injury and concussion, you can not only are you physically changed, but like I'm not the first person to have like gone through a complete change of who I am. The person I was before my accident is different than I am now. And through that journey, through figuring out who I was, there was some mental health struggles, searching for control in a very uncontrolled life, and also had to go through some recovery from some mental health stuff. And so fast forwarding 4 years after the initial accident, I was kind of making my way back into bikes and had an opportunity to qualify for the US World Cups post-pandemic for cyclocross. And I didn't want to do it shouting about myself like my previous career. And I thought it would be a great way to take some stigma out of having these monsters, these mental health monsters, and also to try to shine a light on concussion and TBI, because, at that time it was still kind of taboo. At that time, you just would Google what to do after you had a concussion, and it was like dark room, sensory deprivation, and just kind of wait it out. And, the science is finding that that's not actually the case. So where I felt very isolated and alone without resources, I thought it would be a great chance to try to be that resource for the next me. so that it wasn't this like 2 years of figuring it out, or so that, you know, the friends and family of someone who maybe had an accident would know where to look. So it's not this like dark, murky, scary thing. And so that's how the Small Monsters Project came about. It's our mission is to take the stigma out of having monsters and to provide education and resources around mental health. And so we've done that through just myself being an advocate and racer, you know, like showing that you can go from kind of the depths of an injury or a mental health struggle and survive and even thrive. Like the bike is just this bonus that I get to do. We've also supported other nonprofits who are doing really good work through Love Your Brain. And you can look them up. They're doing amazing stuff for what after looks like for people. And then I also do advocacy rides in San Francisco and support the kids races at all of the USCX cyclocross series. So it's like showing the kids that, you know, it's okay to have monsters and it's okay to talk about it, and also open the conversation with their parents about, you know, helmet safety and the importance of, you know, giving kind of like if you were to break your leg, you go to the doctor and you have a recovery plan. Same thing with a head injury. Like you go to the doctor, you follow this plan, and it can, while still serious, it can also be something that is such a small blip in the grand scheme of, you know, a sports career or a life career.
Let me ask you about this, because it seems it's natural in your personality, and with the increased openness to have dialogue about mental health in general. It sounds like you're making connection with cyclists and non-cyclists and community people about mental health in general, and with sport. And when you're leading rides in San Francisco, I think people are connecting to your story for things that we all struggle with. The idea of having small monsters, one doesn't have to have a head injury to have small monsters.
Totally.
Do you see that to be kind of an evolution of this project, or?
Yeah. The real need and desire for people is to be able to have a safe space to talk about that stuff. The monsters, if you will, like here's the fun analogy that I have. You know, if you were to throw out your back, we're all getting old, throw out your back, and the doctor gives you these exercises to do so that you can, like, you know, operate in the world and hang out with your kids or go to work or ride your bike. And if you do 10 minutes a day of addressing it, everything's fine. Like you live your life normally. But if you let it lapse and you don't do your stretching and you're not on the PT exercises, you know, maybe 2 months, 3 months later, you go to pick up a bag of groceries and your back's out, and then your life has to stop because you have to deal with this thing now.
Mm-hmm.
That can be kind of like your mental health. You know, if you spend a little bit of time every day kind of, you know, addressing the monsters and taking care of yourself and giving yourself permission to, you know, maybe not be okay, that little investment every day doesn't hold you back from the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, and so you know, they become these little monsters that, you know, you can like live with every day. I have mine on my sleeve because I don't think they go away if you have struggles with them. But I do think that they don't have to be this big, heavy, scary thing.
And speaking to the everyday, I would say that, you know, having been part of the cycling community in NorCal for almost 40 years now, it's not something that you go and do once a week. It's something that we do, you know, several times a week with similar groups of friends. So that sense of routine, that sense of being in one's body and a little bit outside of one mind, and doing it with other people, that creation of community, the things that you're doing there, the things that like Miles and Zach are doing with Bicycle Law, the Grasshopper, or the Fat Cake, all these clubs of people creating larger and smaller communities and concentric circles overlapping. That's one of the things that's given me so much joy in this new era of the Grasshoppers is
Mm-hmm.
having this multiple times a year for people to come and to gather. And it's these types of things of just showing up for your coffee ride, or people riding across the bridge to have tea in the morning. It's very profound, and especially the isolating life we can have on screens and computers. So I think that what you're doing with this has a chance to continue to, to grow, and not to fix people, but that analogy also, you mean like the daily work, it's eating well, it's getting your exercise, it's having like real relationships, conversations with people, and being able to talk about these things when it's not necessarily in crisis mode.
Yeah. And, speaking to a cycling audience here, you can't expect to do a 100-mile ride with 9,000 feet of climbing off the couch. It takes work. It takes practice. It takes, daily or weekly or, focus. And so it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a question for you about you previously to that. So I didn't know you before this, right? But I also know, myself as an aspiring bike racer. And I felt really isolated in the sense of, it was also when I was getting my credential and looking for a bigger reason to do something. And like just to go and to get a result. I mean, that was great, but it wasn't to get a paycheck and support my family. It was just because I wanted to see what I could do. How do you compare yourself, like the fulfillment as an athlete before and now, where you're able to be an elite athlete, but like you just said, there's something more to it. And we see that with many cyclists and athletes that kind of freeing themselves once they're able to, in many sports, to be connected to something bigger. Do you feel empowered and kind of like a burden's lifted in a sense to aspire to that?
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. When I was initially trying to be a pro cyclist, it was a little bit of like, this is the thing that I could actually follow through on. Not to get too deep into my past, but I would like start stuff and then not finish it. And I finally found this thing that really clicked with me. And it was kind of just like this tick in the box of some sort of like, yeah, look, universe, like I effing did it. I am a professional cyclist. And for the better part of 3 years of that journey, like I was effectively a pro. I just didn't, wasn't on a professional team, but I was winning pro races. And it really wasn't anything beyond that of like trying to reach this idea. And also there was some sunk cost in there. Like I've already been committed this hard. Like I might as well just keep on it and see it through. And now I'm fortunate enough to have a really good job and a really good support network and a really full life outside of chasing results. And so my coach and I talk about this pretty frequently, as I'm going to be 36 this month, and a lot of the kids I race against are in their low to mid 20s, and it's getting harder to keep up. And, talking about the why, every time I line up on a start line is a celebration. It doesn't matter how good or bad I do. It's showing the world that you can come back from hard things. And that makes it a little bit easier when you get dropped from the group or your back goes out, or, you're battling the thoughts of like, I flew all the way to freaking Massachusetts to do this bike race, and now I'm dropped, and now I don't want to do it anymore. Like, cool, awesome. But just knowing that, it's not just for me that I'm doing this for.
Yeah. And we're happy to, connect with you for King Ridge. As part of our proceeds, we'll support the work that you're doing. And then, folks, if they want to do more, we'll have the link on our webpage to donate directly to the Small Monsters. Is there any other ways that you can let people know that they can be involved and support what you're doing, or to support other folks that are supporting others with mental health and with brain injury?
Yeah, the clerical version is you can go to thesmallmonstersproject.com. There I have a resources tab that connects you to education around concussion TBI, resources around mental health. And so that's like the easiest way to do it. You can share it with people. I also have a link to some podcasts that I've done that give us a little bit longer form version of all the things that I've talked about. So you can either listen to those or pass them around. But it really comes down to both checking in with yourself and checking in with your friends and family. Even it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing, but just being like, hey, how are you? And not letting it just be a good and you, like really give them the time that it deserves. Give yourself the time that you deserve. And I think if everyone can even just make a few steps in that direction, it can, it can further the cause of making the world a better place. Obviously I want Small Monsters to be able to grow and help as many people as possible, but it doesn't need to, like, help doesn't have to have the Small Monsters brand on it. Help is, again, checking with your friends, maybe going on a bike ride to clear your head and not using music, turning off your watt meter and looking up and being around, or giving yourself permission just to not just sit on the couch with your cat or your partner and give yourself permission to take a break.
Yeah, and to be with friends and to be in nature. I just spent a couple of days out at Usal Beach. We're clearing a new campground, and it's just, we all just talked about the restorativeness of friends and community, sometimes alone, sometimes with others. And I'm thankful for cycling to be moving our bodies through space and time, and and have new challenges, some known, some unknown, and to be able to people set their own goals. That's one thing with cycling. You talked about at the elite level, some people are trying to do their first 50 mile, their first 100 mile, their first Grasshopper. I know in terms of personal challenge, we have a lot of new folks coming out to this weekend's King Ridge, which you had. And just at the start, you were saying, how do you wrap your head around this segment thing?
Yeah.
What do you think about people for coming out to just ride 90 miles and 9,000 feet out there? What do you have to say to folks that are going to be like, hey, I'm coming out, I'm going to meet Ben, I'm going to do King Ridge?
Bring snacks, both for yourself and maybe for me if we get cracked in between the fully stocked and well supported rest stops. The nice thing about this particular iteration is that it's a segmented race, and so you get to both zone in and pedal super hard, but there's going to be times, we rode this last week? We rode last week, and it's just gorgeous. And so you get to kind of open up and hang out with the friends and like point at, like, that's the freaking ocean right there, and really take advantage of the wonderful place that we get to call home. And so, yeah, just come with an open mind and patience and be ready for just like a nice long day on the bike.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you there, and hope folks can make an additional donation to Small Monster Projects. And Ben will be there if you guys have questions for him. Say hey. He definitely is noticeable on his mosaic and on his or not kit. So say hi to him or not.
Yeah, please say hi. I'm really looking forward to hanging out with all you guys.
All right. Hey, Ben, thanks again, and rest up, and we'll see you this weekend.
See you this weekend, guys.